and to further commit each appointed and approved persons. The government of Sierra Leone, as is being done now through the office of the Chief Minister, signs a performance contract which gives key performance indicators by which each minister is graded. On Friday, State House reported that President Julius Madaa Bio presided over the signing of performance contracts by 29 ministers. Today on AYV on Sunday, we'll be looking at why sign a performance contract when the powers to hire and fire resides entirely with the presidency. I'm John Conte, and this is AYV on Sunday. President Bio in his second term has reposed confidence in many young people to mantle critical governance positions of trust.
So the second time it's in competition. We all roll back and make sure say we connect citizens and the government.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Why is President Bio veering towards this trend?
Today, for the very first time, we may have a party that has close to 2/3 majority in parliament. That is not good for a democratic. Mr. Minister.
My name is John Conte, and this is AYV on Sunday. Good evening and welcome back to AYV on Sunday, your most anticipated TV show on Sunday. Now, today we'll be discussing the recent ministerial performance contract signed where President Bio urged delivery on government agenda. You can follow us on DSTV channel 399, Radio 11.7 FM, and on our AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page. Send your thoughts and comments. We'll find time to go through them later on in the program. Don't forget to drop us a comment on WhatsApp on +232 8857574 one more time, +232 8857574. That is if you are in the diaspora. And of course, in country, it's 088575742. One more time, 088575742. Drop us your comments. Here to help me unpack the signing of the performance contract by ministers of government in the studio. I have Andrew Lavalley, is the Executive Director for the Institute for Governance Reform. Andrew, welcome to AYV on Sunday.
Yes, good evening viewers and listeners.
Also with us in the studio, Marcos Bangura. He is a very known voice. He's the Executive Director of Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability, C4D. Welcome, Marcos.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we would get to your comments and thoughts during the show later on. But let me mention that we have just been informed that following the issues happening in the Middle East, the United Nations has summoned an emergency Security Council meeting. It will be held at 8 p.m. and we are told Sierra Leone will be making a statement there to state her position as far as the geopolitical tension in the Middle East is concerned. We'll get to that once we get a feed, but this is AYV on Sunday. As mentioned again, we'll be looking at the performance contract signed by all 29 ministers of government last week, and it was presided over by President Julius Madaa Bio. Before we get to a video of that activity, I'd like to welcome the gentlemen again to AYV on Sunday. Andrew, it's been a while since we had you on AYV on Sunday.
Definitely.
Marcos as well, it's been a while since we had you on AYV on Sunday. Yes, now, what we've introduced is taking a look at what your highlights were, or your highlight is for the past week. And we could go from social issues to entertainment, but basically let's talk about your highlights for the week ending on the 13th of April.
I think it's the event on Friday, the launch of the presidential performance contract, ministerial performance contract. I think why we need to celebrate, why it was a highlight, because for the very first time, performance contracts for ministers is now open. So we used to hear about performance contracts happening in State House. But this is the first time for you being a citizen, you can have access, if you're a smartphone user, you can have access to just to know what a ministry of interest, be you following gender, following youth. I think it's something that is worthy of special notice, and I would say congratulations to Minister Senge, Chief Minister Senge, for actually spearheading this initiative.
Marcos, your highlight or highlights?
Yeah,
what were they?
Yeah, thank you very much. A lot of things really happened over the week. But again, just like Abdullah Vali put it, I think the incident on Friday is a very important one, considering the fact that signing a performance contract with ministers speaks a lot, it speaks volume. And we look forward to see the outcome of that. Although I hold the view that I think even the vice president mentioned that the idea, or it was started in 2019. And since then, we have not seen much. But this one has been made so public that it has attracted the minds and hearts of many Sierra Leoneans. So as a result of that, is very important. The second one I will throw light on is the arrest and the DJ Box. Of course, we know that there was a talk around that he was arrested in Guinea, and we saw a video of him in Guinea, though we have not seen one yet in Sierra Leone. We are looking forward to that. But I think that again is very, very important because it has to do with the state, the security of the state, and all that. So as a result of that, if something of that nature, it has to do with politics, it has to do with governance. So as a result, it is very, very, very important that I dilate on that.
Two important issues. Andrew mentioned the fact that this is the first time you're having public access to a contract that is being signed, or contracts that were signed by 20. I mean, I took my time to quantify how many ministries and ministers penned the signature to these documents, and it's 29 ministries altogether. Of course, amongst that you have the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Works, Water Resources, Trade, and the long list of the rest of the others. They were key highlights for last week, obviously. And Marcos just mentioned one of the other highlights. He says caught his attention was that's a video you have to now get to verify whether it was a recent video or it was a video that that was done and was kept in the works and was released to have a media storm around it, to have a media engagement around it. How recent is the video? Those are questions that you'd want to ask as we get to something like that later on. Not on AYV on Sunday today, because it wouldn't be a focus. It's just a highlight. But I mean, I'm sure the media would now try to dig deep and find out and ask more probing questions with regards to that. Now, so let's take a video of what happened on State House when President Bio presided over the signing of these performance contracts. He mentioned quite a few things. Obviously, during the campaign and when he got re-elected, one of the few things he mentioned, and of course his government has mentioned, is the Big Five agenda, and therefore it was key for his government to now have every ministry, from that high level, now present plans that would work and solutions or activities that could be implemented, which would now culminate into all of those Big Five agendas and would push his own agenda as President Bio. So he was there at State House and presided over the signing. Let's take a look at what happened. Our producer has put this together for us.
The signing of the performance contract between President Bio and his cabinet is a commitment to service delivery of the government, especially with the Big Five game changers development priorities. Addressing the gathering, President Bio called on the cabinet secretary, civil society representatives, international and diplomatic partners to join members of his government in executing their agenda.
In keeping with my government's overarching principle of inclusivity, transparency, and accountability, we are opening this exercise to diverse groups of people, including citizens, development and diplomatic partners, and other stakeholders. My administration firmly believes that our nation's governance can only be effective when all diverse views, interests, and aspirations are harnessed for the collective good. I therefore implore you, all of you, as critical partners in our nation building, to be steadfast in your support to this program. Together, we can achieve our shared dreams of peaceful, prosperous, and thriving Sierra Leone. These new ministerial performance contracts are informed by the Big Five game changers, commitments, and targets that will guide our national development effort until 2028. Given the escalating cost of living, both nationally and globally, we must embrace our responsibilities with the utmost sense of urgency that it demands, so that we can successfully deliver on the mandate entrusted to us by our people.
Applauding the initiative, National Focal Person for the Mano River Women Peace Network, Rosalie McCartin, lauds the efforts of government to put in place mechanisms that ensure duty bearers are held accountable for their actions, while making the following demands.
Let me take this opportunity to appeal for more resources to be provided for the popularization, localization, and monitoring of the GWIACs, as well as for the upcoming third generation of the Sierra Leone National Action Plan on UN Security Council Resolutions 1325 and 1820 of the UN Security Council on women, peace, and security. We often refer to this action plan as SILMA 3 because we already had 2 generations developed, our signatories well. May God guide your footsteps and actions. Don't forget to support Women's Forum as we are observing our 30th anniversary this year.
The signing of a performance contract by ministers is closely aligned with the government's Big Five changes and the medium-term National Development Plan for 2024-2030 with the aim of enhancing delivery. Ronald Jomorovia, AYV News, Freetown.
Many thanks to Ronald for putting that together. Welcome back. We mentioned that President presided over the signing of the contract, and of course I'm sure a copy was given to each minister there present. Now, gentlemen, let me come back to you. Andrew, I'm going to start off with you. You both are working in development, and I know that before you implement a project, it is very important to have your objectives set out clearly. And then you now, from the objectives, you get to set out what your KPIs are, the key performance indicators that you'd be looking at. But let's start off by explaining what is a performance contract for the consumption of our viewership. For some who might not have heard a term like performance contract before, or those who might have heard it but are still not sure of what it really is. Let me start off with you, Andrew. What is a performance contract?
Thank you very much. As a student of development, I always believe that development is a journey with a clear starting point and a destination. Mm-hmm. And too often we quarrel over the means of travel. How do we get there? Mm. But John, we all want to get clean water. It doesn't matter whether you're a northerner, you're a southerner. We all want to get electricity. Mm. We all want our kids to go to school. We all want to live in peace. So there is convergence on what the needs are. So when you talk about performance contracting, normally when we go to the polls, we vote for government. And in fact, the reason why I celebrate this, and I continue to say I celebrate this, because there has been so much focus on voting and election, rather than the things that actually we need for our lives. The food, how do we raise food, how do we ensure that we are food secure, and I think these should be the conversations that political parties should be having. Mm. So these should be the conversations that we'll be having. Before I actually define performance contract, let me just go a little bit, just one issue. So when you look at the document, for example, I just picked on one issue, which is youth employment. Yeah. And I decided to go line by line, sector by sector, and I realized that they are promising over 140,000 jobs, over 150,000 jobs this year. Mm. Let us make sure it happens.
And that is part of the 500,000 jobs.
That's 500,000 jobs. They are saying 20,000 jobs are going to come from agriculture. 20,000 jobs are going to, 1,500,000 jobs are going to come from communications-related projects. Defense-related projects, 1,500 jobs. 100,000 jobs from different jobs from labor and creation. 1,500 green jobs from environment. I mean, the list goes on. You know why this is important? And you know why I said the very first step we are making towards having open performance-based system is because my child in school now will take that booklet to say, let us count the jobs, Mr. Minister of Development, Minister of, take any ministry, say, you know, aquaculture. Ministry of Marine Resources said you're going to provide 1,500 aquaculture jobs. Where are the aquaculture jobs? Where is the list? Where are the people? So, to your question on performance contract or performance bond, as you may call it, it marks what we call key performance indicators, that will determine the delivery of a particular portfolio. So I give you this job and I say, I'm paying your fees as a student. What I need from you as a way of performance, you should have at least a division 2, or you should pass your grades from class 1 to class 2. That is a key performance target for you. So I leave my house and you leave your wife at home, and you give you know, funds for food. A key performance indicator should be, I should meet food at home. The kids should be fed. I go to clinic and I pay medical fees. A key performance indicator should be the medical services has to be. So this is why it's important. And too often, it has been shrouded in secrecy. We never knew under Kaba, under Kuruma, under Bio's first term. We never knew. I mean, there was talk about performance contracting. There has always been talk about performance.
They were signed, but
they were signed, but we never saw it. You know what caught my attention? There was a moment in 2015 when Sam Sumana was relieved of his duty, and we had one of the advocates for him at that time was the mayor of Kono, Emerson Lamina. We did a service delivery index at IGR. We did a service delivery index where we track the status of services in each local council. And the service delivery for Kono compared to Bonth, compared to Falaba at the time, was way advanced. And then Emerson Lamina was struck off government because they said it's not delivering services. So I think this performance contract is a cover for ministers. It's not just about being a welcome news for citizens, but it's a cover for ministers.
What does that mean, Andrew? That are you saying that? I mean, as in the intro we mentioned that, I mean, the prerogative to now hire and fire rests entirely with the presidency. Are you now saying this cover would mean that a minister would now only be fired, be judged whether you are to continue in office or to be fired based on the deliverables from your performance?
That's the spirit behind performance contracting. It's been derived from Rwanda, where performance contracting in Rwanda is a big media event. I mean, when they say today we are going to declare, or in a week, because it's not a daily event, when they say in this month we are going to declare ministerial performance stewardship, you see all ministers, say for example the Minister of Agriculture going to the farm fields, taking AYV, say let's go and see the fields that were cultivated. Minister of Labor providing list of jobs that you are given. At the end of the day, we begin to focus the conversation of politics and policy on those issues, not as to whether this is Loko, this is Timini, this is Kranko, as we have seen in the last 63 years of independence. I think, so to me, it's a major shift, and it could be a welcome protection for the ministers. And you know, normally when the minister sits on a on the public platform, the first thing the minister says, in the wisdom of the president, and when the president moves, you see whether you have schedule or not, going after the president. You have a job to do. Now, we now have a situation where we can say, Ministry of Development, you have 3,400 jobs on MODEP surveys. Where are the jobs? This is just unemployment. So I'm really encourage every Sierra Leonean, go online, access the performance contract. On our part at IGR, on the 26th, let me just take this opportunity to make this free publicity on follow-up. On the 26th of this month, we're actually putting all of this online. So you have an open performance-based system, platform, where as a citizen, you will see not only these performance indicators, but all of the promises President Bio made in 2023 elections. And of course, which has been translated. Is it still going to be the biometer? It's going to be the biometer. We are launching a baseline of the biometer on the 26th of this month. All right, and we'll come back to you. Having clearly explained what this entire concept around performance contracting is. He said in other countries it's a huge deal. It's got a huge media event around it. So it's out there in the open for citizens to see, to know, and understand what the individual ministries are doing. Marcos, why is it important to have a performance contract signed with ministers, with individuals who are appointed as ministers of government? Why is it important to have a performance contract signed with them?
Yes, of course, having a performance contract with the president and his ministers is very important, because it is a means of evaluation of the performance of ministers. In other words, it's a kind of a measurement, a barometer, if you like, to say that the performance of ministers will be evaluated. And of course, it is no secret that it is new. It is not new, because of the fact that in 2019, I hold the view I had about performance contracts. But this time around, it is probably a little different, in the sense that I am seeing a kind of aroma around it. And probably the previous ones were not made known to us. So we have little or no knowledge about what actually happened. Whether the performance contract that we have signed were actually, or the ministers perform or not, we don't know. But in a generality, I want to categorically say that performance contract is very important. That it will help to boost accountability. That is why I am in strong support of it, in the sense that my organization talks about democratic accountability, holding public officials to account on issues of national interest. So as a result of that, the president coming with a performance contract in which the ministers, I want to believe, voluntarily sign. I want to believe they were not forced. If you want to hold your office, you will sign the performance contract, because it's all about accountability, it's all about transparency. But we not want a situation wherein it will become a kind of a ritual, in the sense that we saw what happened that very day. We saw what happened on Friday when it was signed, and it became a kind of a magnet of attention within the country. And I hold the view that outside the country as well. But we don't want a situation wherein it will be a kind of a ritual performance or a mere political expression. That is to say that some ministers probably may want to go and put the document on their shelves, and they wait at a time when reporting time. That's the time.
But that would be the biggest mistake
that would be the
biggest mistake one can make at the moment.
So that is
to take a document of this nature that is in public view, public eye, to go place them on your shelf and let it gather dust. I mean, at the end of the day, if you place that document on the shelf, you and the document will be dusted out of.
So that is what we want. That is why we are creating that alarm now, right? Because Sierra Leone is a country, we've got a lot of things that have happened. It is not that this one has been signed, But there are certain things that are also binding, irrespective of the fact that they are not signed. You understand? And we've had a lot of them. Governments in, governments out, right? We've got wherein, for example, in 2018 to 2019, even beyond that, we know that a lot of ministers, when the president called on ministers to embark upon farming, right? A lot of ministers, as a kind of a performance or demonstration farms, a lot of them said they had farms. You agree with me? So at the end of the day, we did not see the farms. So if we have, the president has made it fit and wise for ministers to actually sign a performance contract, it is but eminent that they make use of it rather than put it right behind their or inside their shelves. Because I want to say that performance contracts in general can hold ministers to account because they are mindful of the fact that they have been given a kind of responsibility. And the whole thing about governance, participatory governance, it has to do with accountability and responsiveness. Giving them a performance contract means that it is a kind of accountability and also responsiveness, because at the end of the day, they should give that report. But we don't know whether it will be done. We know it is annual, but we don't know whether it's going to be a monthly report, right, or quarterly report. And also, I have not got access yet to it, but Andrew says that we get it.
I'm sure it's available.
So it's very easy.
Let me send it to you.
If we have, I mean, if our viewers would want to request, I have a copy. I wouldn't mind sharing it.
Okay.
On WhatsApp. I mean, it's so. But
let me just say something.
Yeah.
Another important thing about this performance contract is the matrix, right? And also, what will be the performance criteria for the ministers? Because there should be performance criteria. Because once there is a performance criteria, they are mindful of the fact that they need to work in conformity to what it says and also what the Constitution says. So as a result of that, we expect that the performance contracts will be, we inculcate all these things that I've spoken about. Say, for example, the matrix. We want to see the matrix and also that of the performance criteria, because there should be a performance criteria. Otherwise, it's like beating the dead horse.
We will get to some of the some ministries, some very very key ministries. But let me go to the foreword that was written by the Chief Minister, Dr. David Senge. Now he says, when I took office as Chief Minister, I focused on President Bio's vision to do more for his people in his second term in office. With his well-articulated manifesto and the medium-term National Development Plan 2024 to 2030 developed, my office had ensured extensive interactions with key public service officials to develop a mechanism for the execution of the MTNDP on a year-by-year basis. And our tool is the performance contract. This exercise allowed staff of ministries and the agencies to reflect and agree on common goals, priorities, and targets that can be achieved by government in the year 2024. And that's a very important passage, which points to the fact that this was not just a document that was developed by the Office of the Chief Minister, but like he said, he had extensive consultation with these ministries, even with staff, to ensure that this is a document that was put together he says, to reflect and agree on 1, common goals, 2, priorities, and 3, targets that can be achieved by the government in 2024.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I continue to say thank you to Minister Stenge for actually taking this bold move. A lot of, too often people are afraid to put their colleagues on the line. It's like you're putting me under the bus. But I think when you take a political office, you are bound to deliver, and this is what it means. So it doesn't matter whether you are SLP and APC. I continue to say that we all want Sierra Leone to develop. We all want Sierra Leone to grow. I think what Minister Senga has done for the first time, because by just making it open, we are beginning to guide the conversations. So if I'm a minister, for example, I'm a minister of any ministry, and you, Marcus Bangura, you want to come with a particular conversation that is outside my remit, I would say, I know that is important, but we have prioritized.
Have a target, exactly.
Yes, let's focus on this. So it doesn't mean that other things are not important. You know, Rwanda used this initiative, they used to call it Iminigo. That means like really working for the community, performing for the community. I only hope there's a local name we can give for performance contracting, so that you actually know it doesn't matter whether you're APC and SLPP, when you take office, you need to deliver. So for the first time, we need elites to agree that it's about our people. It's not about our region, it's not about our color, but it's really about, you know, that Timni woman, that Mende woman that needs good health care.
Yeah.
What is the Ministry of Health doing about this? What is the Ministry of Finance making sure that resources are available to the Ministry of Health to ensure that that task is done? So I think, to me, this is the very first step. There are a lot of elements about it. One is really managing expectations. So we now know, in the context of little resources and in the context of much need, what you do, you prioritize. So I have seen for the past 10 years, not just 6 years, even under Kuruma, the conversation we've been having, John, on television, on radio, is largely about politics.
Yeah.
And that's why I've noticed a lot of Sierra Leoneans, very good Sierra Leoneans, very technical, they will never, you invite them on radio and television, they won't come.
They will not show up.
They won't come because when they come, even when they share, they are being smeared, they are being tarred. It's only a few of us that will say, it doesn't matter which name I'm being called, I will come up for that conversation. We only hope this creates a new dawn where we say, let's talk about the things that move us forward. So that thing about hate, there is hate in every society, but most societies that have moved forward, in the context of all the hate, they say, let us talk about our progress. So to me, this is the news that is worth celebrating. But there are clear alarm signals.
What are these signals?
The alarm signals, one, there is a hope. So if you say 140,000 jobs, the question you ask yourselves, where are you getting the jobs from? So as Marcos said, it should not just be a promise. In fact, this is the worst thing you can do. If you promise these jobs, you don't deliver them. Because a lot of young people now online will be I'll be encouraging them to do what they call job counting. You can actually count the jobs down online, whether they are available or not. So the government has actually put a new layer of pressure on itself by giving this tool to citizens, say, judge us by this. So it begs the question on where is the private sector? Because when you look at the New Direction Manifesto, when you look at the development plan that came with it, because there's a convergence between the New Direction Manifesto and the development plan that emerged out of that. The plan said 70% of the 500,000 jobs are going to be given by the private sector. So we need to ask, where is the private sector? So the Ministry of Trade, all other ministries are going to ensure that there should be a private sector that should generate these jobs. So if you say you want to generate 500,000 jobs, I think it will be a moment to say, let's forget about it, because we have a job to do. So to me, this is a new conversation that we're having. We can have broader conversation of whether this is going to work. What are the foundational conditions that we need to put in place for them to work? But the fact of the matter is, I think it's a giant step to say, let us put it out there, judge me by this.
Interesting, judge me by this. Again, to the forward, written by the Chief Minister. A lot of points raised there, Andrew, but let me move over to Marcos. As mentioned, before I get to you, Marcos, as mentioned, at 8 o'clock, Sierra Leone would be addressing the United Nations Security Council, we were told, following the issues happening in the Middle East now. But Marcos, to the forward again, written by the Chief Minister, he says, I think Andrew mentioned that in as much as you have a lot of work going on, there will be ministries who will be working on very interesting project. But the Chief Minister says we have prioritized rigorously, he used that word, to ensure that while each ministry and its agencies will be performing many tasks throughout the year, we share a common vision of the most critical end-of-year output and focus on our efforts accordingly. It therefore points to the long-term outcomes and end-of-year outputs stroke targets laid out in a way that allows for assessment of the performance of all government ministries and their respective agencies throughout the year. So in other words, it's saying, okay, I mean, it might have been happening this way in the past, that we were all heading in the wrong direction, but it's now time for us to focus on what the major targets are, and we look at the outputs and stay, aligned until we get to the end of the year. I mean, that is what the Chief Minister is saying here, Marcos.
Yes, I think that is well said, as a matter of fact, because the whole rationale behind the signing of the performance contracts is to put ministers on their toes, to ensure that they double their efforts, they stand tall, especially in the area of service delivery, because the whole essence of this is service delivery, effective service delivery. Because one of the reasons why, in fact, Sierra Leone service delivery system has been poor, it is because mechanisms have not been put in place, especially in the area of accountability. Because if individuals or public officials are not held to account on their performances, there is a proclivity that they will show lethargy in what they do. And that will be detrimental to the nation and at the expense of Sierra Leoneans. So that is why I think the minister, chief minister, right, is saying that they should all come on deck. They should work assiduously. They should put hands on deck to achieve the common objective. And that common objective is that results-oriented intuition. That is to say that they should be able to produce results. Because if the results are not produced or they are not provided, then the country will continue to suffer and we will continue to grumble all over the place. You agree with me that Sierra Leone has been caught in a web of crisis, right? And as a result of that, the president is challenged, or the country is challenged, so that they should find ways and means to combat some of the crucibles that have actually liquidated Sierra Leone. So that is why making that kind of statement, even the creation of that office of the chief minister and taking a center stage on this particular thing, I think is very, very important. So that is why ministers should make sure that they do their work. There comes the question as to whether the president will actually take action against certain individuals that fall short of their responsibility. And again, how would Sierra Leoneans or citizens know that certain ministers have underperformed? And for the mere fact that they have underperformed, actions will be taken against them. Not merely that they should be sacked, but they should go beyond that, right? Because it's a contract. A contract is an agreement between individuals. That is why I mentioned initially that I don't think any minister was forced to go into that, right? But the president, that is his own desire. And as a result of that, all ministers are subject to that. So the onus is upon you to decide as to whether you do it or not. But I am still emphasizing that the president should put proactive measures in place. Because let's say, what I believe and what I've experienced, what I've seen, most times we show lethargy. There comes the question of sacred cow as well. That is why we be having an independent body to actually work with the president to do an assessment on that, or it will be on the volition, right, or discretion of the president to determine whether this person has actually performed or this person has not performed. Because it is only when we take that into consideration, even the issue of good governance principles, especially that of transparency, right? How transparent will that be to the people of Sierra Leone, in as much as we hold this particular view to be sacrosanct, right, to be sacred, but we don't want a ritualistic, tendency to put into it, because you will see it to be not important. Say, Marcos wants to create something, but the fact is, these documents that have been signed, right, should be made use of, because once it is made use of, now let me say, for example, there have been a lot of ministers, and the president, this is the second term of the president, right? And this time around, would the president, stand firm to ensure that certain individuals are actually dealt with in a case wherein they fall short? Because it is only when these things are put into consideration and they are put into effect and they are executed, right, that we'll be able to achieve this very objective. Because if the set criteria are not made known to the public, right, and it's like I mentioned earlier, pouring water on the dog's back. That is why I don't want it to be a mere political expression. Right?
So, I mean, looking at the document, Marcos, I've read through, quite a bit. I mean, since it was released. If you look at the document, how professionally it was put together, the cohesiveness of it, and how like the chief minister mentioned, this wasn't a haphazard task. This wasn't a haphazard job. It was one that was done in consultation with the respective ministries, the professionals on ground, the consultants that they work with, to ensure that they look at what the thorny issues were and prepare a document that would be, attainable with all the goals that are there. So if you read through clearly, you see some of the project trackers indicating what are you going to measure every action, the key performance indicators, how are you going to track them, what are you going to look for to ensure, for instance, let's go to the Ministry of Energy, for instance. Now it says that as part of the ministry's core functions, the priorities for the current year would be, number one, to reduce electricity distribution and supply agency and distribution and losses, to reduce it from 45% to 40%. But that's a huge ask, but that's going to be one of the key priorities. The second priority will be renewable energy generation increased from 35 to 45%, 10% in a year. It says also 7 out of 12 district capital electrification in all 16 locations countrywide completed to 100%. So there is the electrification process that is ongoing. So they say that needs to go to 100%. That is a key priority. Renewable energy generation, I mentioned already, to move from, I think that was duplicated, but it says its generation increased from 35% to 45% in 2024. Now again, saying the Goma Hydro Dam that is in the eastern province upgraded to increase generation now from 6 megawatts to 9 megawatts. Power importation or transportation from CLSG via Guinea commenced to another 120 megawatts. So these are key
all
priorities.
in 1 year.
All in 1 year. These are key priorities all in 1 year. And then there are project trackers, what you would be looking at that are tied to all of these priorities. So part of the trackers would be the energy sector utility reform project at the cost of $90 million. Announcing Sierra Leone Energy Access Project for the cost of $65.7 million. Regional Emergency Solar Power Intervention Project at the cost of $75 million. Plenty money. A lot is being said here about the resources that are going to be put in this. Rehabilitation and extension of Bokenama Distribution System Project for the cost of $46.71 million, almost $47 million. CLSG Electricity Network Interconnection Project, Rural Electrification for the cost of $17.16 million. So you have all the trackers. So the things that I mentioned up there to say you have to reduce, they are all tied to, they have individual lines that are pointing to these trackers, how they now fit into. So electrification is mentioned, CLSG is mentioned, and renewable energy is also mentioned here. So Andrew, these documents are all in public viewing. These documents, with all the commitments that are made here, the figures. So as part of also under the management performance target indication, one I think most of the ministries do have it. It's the 12th indicator. It says it is to reduce corruption-related audit queries and implement its recommendation to the level of 80%. Implement ACC corruption prevention strategies to the level of 80% and ensure compliance with procurement procedures and processes to the level of 50%. Now, Andrew, you mentioned earlier that this is something that would increase transparency because now, your contracts are in the open, in the public. You cannot tell the public that you don't know what's going on. You cannot tell the Ministry of Energy. It's a key concern for every one of us. And these are just, we're just glossing over them. We cannot dig or delve deep.
Definitely.
Because these are 29 ministries, but Ministry of Energy, for instance.
Definitely. There's quite a lot in there. And I only wish that minister succeeds, and I wish all of them to succeed. I say this because it's difficult to fix a country, especially a country like ours. It's very difficult. What is very easy is really to sit down and criticize. It's very easy. You can go to the market, say, I did not get electricity today. It's really bad. There is darkness all over. But it's really difficult to say, come to the room, deliver this. And if you get that position, your role is not to give ifs and buts, it's actually to deliver the results. So I think the first question we need to ask, on the basis of what you've read on the performance contract for the Ministry of Energy, so you can see there are a few things that are not clearly defined. And moving forward, we actually need to see, as we discuss this document, a lot more publicly. So we need, if you talk about baseline, we want to reduce electricity generation from this to this, so you begin to
the
see
losses. You want to reduce the losses.
Yeah, you want to reduce the loss. So you're definitely, so it's good he gave a baseline. So the current baseline is about 40%. So it's 45%. You want to reduce it now to 40%. So we actually need baseline. Say, for example, if you talk about employment, you need to define what is employment. What do you call a job? So even though it's been a little defined, so we need to, because a young man who will be looking at this document will say, no, I just had jobs for 2 weeks and the contract done. Is that a job? So we actually need to there is need for a lot more conversation. I'm sure the Ministry of Information and Civic Education, we should actually do a roadshow on the performance contract so that citizens really know what they expect to see at the end of the year. So that baseline is needed. We all need to know, if you say you're going to do this, where are we now on this? So if you say you're going to provide 1,500 jobs, where are we now in terms of jobs? So it means you're moving actually from zero. So it means 1,500 new jobs. It doesn't mean jobs are not available. It means 1,500 new jobs. So I think the other issue that we need to tie all of this to, in 2023, during the campaign, President Bio made bold promises. I know he'll be giving performance contract in doses for the next 4 years until the end of his term. So the question you ask yourself, whether all of these doses are going to meet the target that he gave. Clearly. So are we going to achieve 500,000 jobs? Are we going to get this? So then we actually need to address vagueness as we go. So when I say have this clearly defined, I cannot talk about the monies, but it is really it's really startling for you to be mentioning dollars, this project in dollars for a country that uses leones. So the more you announce those figures, the more I understood that Sierra Leone is largely donor driven. So we expect other performance contracts for us to actually be getting ownership to say we are going to finance this. So we expect, say, for example, the next maybe after 3-4 years, before the president's tenure expires, you will begin to see that some of this cost actually reduces. They will begin to see much more finances being injected in other welfare needs. But for when you kept mentioning, most of the projects in that document are in foreign currencies. Most of the projects in almost in every ministry. The Ministry of Finance, I kept reading this dollars. So we actually need to see how we have a conversation on development financing. Because at the end of the day, if those who say they are financing this say, no, we don't vex now, we are not.
Again, Andrew, you just touched on a very important point, and I'll get back to the Ministry of Energy and look at the managerial performance target or indicators. And I think the 10th target or indicator there is saying, first of all, they're talking about improved domestic revenue generation for the ministry and its agencies to the tune of $80 million again, and ensure compliance with budgetary level and its regulations by 85%. Now, establish 5 strategic work partnerships. Mobilize external funds, a minimum of $1 million. So locally, you are getting 80 million, and then you're saying you want.
So can you read the first target where you read about the $80 million?
So it says to improve domestic revenue generation for the ministry and its agencies to the tune of $80 million US.
So it's useful. It's useful to know how much is being raised now. So I mean that's the kind of vagueness that we should know. So
I agree with you, Andrew. A lot of vagueness in this.
So you will know that we're actually moving from 40 million to 80 million. So we're actually increasing by 100%.
So the question is, what do we have now?
What are we raising?
Yes, Marcus.
What I want to say here is, the conceptualization is good, right? And looking at the Ministry of Energy as it is now, and you look at Sierra Leone in terms of the economy, right? Considering the fact that our GDP is about $5 million, right? If we dependency theory, right, is one theory that has contributed greatly to the underdevelopment of Africa, right? So,
is that ever going to end?
Well, we are saying what is affecting us now. That's what we are addressing.
It's never going to end until we are able to generate enough
dependency theory. The reason why I brought dependency theory is the amount of monies that is expected now to be expended in these ministries, especially the Ministry of Energy. Is it that we have something in store already, right? We have something in store already, because these are all what we call utopia. Utopia in the sense, now look at that 80 million to be generated, right, by domestic revenue. I want to believe that revenue should be generated by the ministry itself, perhaps through the electricity that we are paying, right? So if you take that into consideration, that even the area of jobs, if you look at the area of jobs, the government is expecting 70% to come from the private sector, right? And we all know that the government is the biggest provider of jobs in the country. Now, in the 500,000
500,000
jobs,
500,000.
and 70%, right, is expected from the private sector, right? So you have to look at it. Is not as concrete as we may think about it, right? Just as you mentioned, vague. These are vague for now, you understand, until they come to reality. Had we got the money in store, right, and if we depend on the international community to give us that support, then there will come a time, right, where if these individuals, these ministers are unable to perform, they will shift the blame to the president of the government that the monies they should have generated did not come. You understand? Say, for example, with all the monies now from that particular ministry, because we have certain ministries that can generate funds. You understand? They are able to domestically to generate revenue. There are others that don't generate, right? Like social services, right? It will be very difficult for them to actually generate. Say, for example, Ministry of Education, they will not generate, but rather we spend more money in that particular ministry. And I want to believe those tasks perhaps will not be brought. There will be other criteria that will be put in place. But to say that, again, there are times when you talk about subvention, wherein government delay, right, the subvention, right? And if government delays subvention, how do you expect the ministries, right, to have accomplished certain criteria given to them? So it will be very difficult. At the end of the day, we'll come back without, creating that impact. I pray that we are able, these ministries are able to actually generate that money. But that's why I said I don't just believe in mere.
Well, I mean, you have a chief minister who is leading the entire team. I mean, he says part of his forward, if you go back to it, he says he will provide the enabling environment. That means he will ensure that...
We've been hearing these things for some time.
That means he's ensuring that resources will be available for that. But and Andrew, let's move on to... I read a bit from the Ministry of Basic and Senior Education. Now, it's interesting. It says that... I'll read the whole bit and then get to the point and try to break them down. And I would like to take you to the Ministry of Health and Sanitation. There are things that would concern everyone, which we have to see. Now, in 2024, that's the Ministry of Basic and Senior Education. It says the minister, Conrad Saki, signed a performance contract with HE, the president, detailing the specific outcomes to which his ministry will contribute for the long-term development of Sierra Leone. These outcomes include: 1, accelerated and expanded free and quality-based basic and senior secondary education. That's 1. 2, fully verified teachers and schools payrolls. 3, increased enrollment and improvement in performance in public exams. 4, sound education policies to boost functional learning or foundational learning. Now, the specific contributions of the ministry during 2024 are described in the forms of outputs that the ministry aims to achieve by December of this year. A list of the outputs will be tracked by the Office of the President, and it is provided below. This list is not exhaustive. It only represents key outputs that are directly linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals Midterm National Development Plan, the ministry's core functions and its excellency priorities for the current years. It says: 1, access to primary and secondary education expanded through increase in the number of classrooms by 45%. What do we have now? Is there a baseline? If we're increasing to 45%, where are we at the moment in April 2024? Qualified teachers and educators recruited and trained to meet the foundational learning, science, technology, engineering, agriculture, and mathematics, the STEAM needs. Now, educational system well managed through data use, governance, accountability, and parallel skills acquisition and use. Technology in teaching and learning improved through provision of community library, science laboratory, and internet connectivity. So you're saying, going back to what used to happen when you had a library, a functional library, you had a lab, science laboratory, and of course now with internet connectivity introduced. Quality educational system promoted through robust school supervision, monitoring, coaching, accountability mechanisms, community ownership, and measurement. Number 6, it says comprehensive safety promoted in schools through case management systems in place for 1, child abuse, gender-based violence, GBV, child safeguarding guidelines, and guardians and counseling. Now, project trackers. Project trackers. Okay, first it says direct to government boarding schools to meet the dietary needs of pupils in government secondary schools. Bow school. For the approved cost of 19 billion.
Leons.
Oh, wow, that's 19 million. Previously 19 billion leons. 19 million 105.
No, now we're talking about Leons, it means governments of Sierra Leone funded.
Governments of Sierra Leone funded.
Yes.
Kenema School, Jimmy Baba Government School, Maboka Boys School, Mathura Girls School, Madina Government School, Koima Government Secondary School. The list is long. Procurement, again, free as a project tracker. Andrew, it says supply of beds and accessories for 7 government boarding home secondary schools for 2019-2020 academic year, lots 3 for the cost of 1 billion. Well, 1 million now, 449 leons. Interesting project trackers and dietary consideration, and then beds provided as well. Interesting trackers.
So yeah. Before going to education, let me just speak a little bit on the conversation we're having on energy. So I think, Marcus, there is no harm in a country going actually to take a loan from another country to develop improve services. So if you actually need it, to me, it's really about how some of these loans are negotiated, how they're contracted to ensure we get value for money. But if we get some financial injection into the energy system, and if that means we are going to consign our energy challenges into history, I think that's fine. And some of these things that we call vague may not necessarily It doesn't mean that the document itself is vague, but there are certain things that just need clarification, especially because it's quite concise. And sometimes, you know, when you're writing a document...
Andrew, forgive me, I'm going to have to pause you there for now. I've just been told that we have a feed from the United Nations. As mentioned, the UN will be holding... that's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Imran Kanu speaking there. Let's go directly and get that feed.
Attacks by the Islamic Republic of Iran targeting Israel, in which he, and I quote, strongly condemns the serious escalation represented by the large-scale attack launched on Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran, end of quote, and call for an immediate cessation of these hostilities. Madam President, the Middle East region is once again and regrettably at dangerous crossroads. The escalating tension in the Middle East is dangerous and unprecedented, with the potential to destabilize not only the entire region, but impact global peace and security. Less than 2 weeks ago, in this Council, Sierra Leone strongly condemned the use of force in violation of the UN Charter, relevant international law, including the development and conduct of friendly relations, diplomatic and consular protections, as well as conduct in the region that may lead to an escalation or exacerbate tensions in the already volatile situation. In a similar way, Sierra Leone strongly condemns claimed reprisal attacks not in conformity with international law and the UN Charter. With the Middle East at a knife's edge and at the precipice of a dangerous escalation, either by an intentional calculus or accidental one, with equally grave global ramification, the path to peace is certainly not tit-for-tat military attacks, but rather de-escalation and diplomatic engagement. To this end, we call on both parties and all other involved parties to exercise maximum restraint and resist the urge to the further resort to the use of force. We call on the parties and all other involved parties to be mindful of their obligations under international law, the UN Charter, and to comply with all relevant Security Council resolutions. The parties are unequivocally obligated to comply with their international law obligations, the UN Charter principles and provisions in good faith, in particular, the imperative for the peaceful resolution of dispute and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of each state. In urging de-escalation, Sierra Leone is also mindful of the ongoing hostilities in the Gaza Strip and the further imperative for the full implementation of Security Council resolutions 2712, 2720, and 2728. The United Nations must not retreat from its important purpose and role in confronting the consequential challenges of our times. The Security Council must continue to play its part as envisaged by the UN Charter. Further, Sierra Leone expresses full support for the United Nations Secretary General and its envoys and representatives to use the good offices of our organization to lead efforts in ensuring de-escalation. All involved parties must move onto the path of peace, peaceful coexistence, and good neighborliness through negotiations. States with influence over the parties are called upon to leverage such influence for de-escalation and peace. Let us choose peace, security, and stability over war. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone and pass the floor to Slovenia.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations, Dr. Michael Imran Kanu, addressing United Nations there on Sierra Leone's position as it relates to what is happening between Iran and Israel at the moment. If you're following international news, it was reported yesterday that Iran fired drones towards Israel in an exchange for retaliation for some actions that were taken by Israel during the week. Well, gentlemen, let's come back. First of all, Andrew, Sierra Leone's Sierra Leone's position and Sierra Leone's representation in the United Nations Security Council? How significant is that in the grand scheme of global geopolitics?
No, I think it's an opportunity for a country that is actually a fly on the global stage to have a voice in what is happening. What that means, it's as a matter of prestige, it is. Whether that can be converted into material benefits for the country, it's yet to see. I think it's left with students of international relations to take a position on what is happening between Iran and Israel. To be honest, I don't have any position on that.
No, absolutely. I wasn't expecting you to have a position. I was just saying, Sierra Leone's representation. Your thoughts on that. Over to you, Marcos, before we come back to looking at the performance contract signed by the government.
As a student of international relations, I hold the view that the submission made there represents us properly, because the representative there condemned the action of Iran, right, in firing those missiles into Israel. And the world is governed by law. There is international law. And if you look at the factors that actually culminated to the crisis, it's as a result of the attack made against Israel. And now Iran is doing the same thing. So there is that proclivity for political instability in that area. And once it happens, there is a tendency for it to spread to other areas. And most times we talk about global problems. If we begin to discuss the problem of Sierra Leone, we link it to global issues. For example, the war in Ukraine. The president of Sierra Leoneans, especially those connected with governments, will hardly say things in respect of the economy without mentioning the corona, right? Or the issue in Iran. Look at fuel crisis. So that is why there is a need for stability within the world. That is why the United Nations itself was established, to ensure that there is no recurrence of what happened in the Second World War, right? Remember that we have faced a lot of crises, but since 1945, the world has been able to actually maintain some amount of peace, irrespective of the fact that there is sometimes crises occur either in certain areas, but it has not captured the world as a whole. So I think the stance there is good because it has to do with neutrality. But you can't, because if you look at the United Nations Charter, right, there are provisions for a state not to interfere into the internal affairs of another state, especially under invasion, like what happened. So I think it is in place, and
all right. Thank you, Marcos. It's in place. I mean, you subscribe. Unfortunately, Andrew didn't subscribe to anything. Sitting on the fence, playing. He's playing. He's playing.
Representative stated.
No, but
I support.
So you support.
It is in line. If I had been there independently on my own, I could have made the same statement.
You would have made the same. But Andrew's being very cautious. I mean, he's playing the UN role now, sitting on the fence.
As a student of international relations, I think.
That's fine. You are at liberty to. But
yes.
Andrew, let's come back to, you were talking about the Ministry of Energy, for instance, and then we move to education. I want to talk about Ministry of Health as well. We don't have time now, but let's quickly move on to Ministry of Energy, Education, and then we'll go to Ministry of Health.
Okay, so education. I think the commitment to education is fine. That's one ministry I'm following very closely. When the performance contract was out, I said to the ministry, this is our contract. Because when you're a civil society overseeing a particular ministry, bringing citizens' voice into the ministry, that result is your result. Because your work should not be disruptive. Your work at least should be mutually reinforcing. So when the minister said, when we saw in the performance contract that we are going to hire more qualified teachers in sciences, and he spoke about STEM, if you look at the State of Education report, which was published this year, and it was actually launched at the very ministry by a network of civil society, that was the biggest ask, especially for rural communities. There are certain chiefdoms where you find difficult for you to have a maths teacher and a science teacher. So I think attention needs to be given to that. We only hope that is being achieved. Data, the use of data, we see the ministry always generates what they call the annual school census. And so one of the things that we are concerned about was teacher absenteeism. So how do you use data to inform the planning of the school, safeguarding schools? So we saw that there was a massive improvement in the since the introduction of the radical inclusion in school. Of course, Sierra Leone is one country in the world where we have pregnant girls, controversial though it was, going back to school, child mothers going back to school as part of the radical inclusion policy. So when you talk about safeguarding policies, especially for persons with disability, I think it's something that is worthy of special notice. Yeah. So I think what is needed, we definitely will engage with these sectors for greater clarity on some of these indicators, these performance benchmarks, and advise every ministry to see which support do you need from the public, from the media, from civil society, to ensure that your performance targets are being achieved. Because, I mean, as Marcus was saying, it's not useful. I think it will be at anyone's peril for you to convene again on the 12th of April next year to say, no, I did not do this because I had XYZ hindrance. It becomes inexcusable. So I think it's good for you to see how the public, especially civil society and the media, can be mobilized to see how public supports can be given to deliver these results.
Yeah, absolutely. Mobilize public support, to achieve this. Let's move over to Ministry of Health. I mean, it's a lot to talk about, but let's move over to Ministry of Health, which is also another key, ministry that we need to talk about. Now, Dr. Austin Demby signed the performance contract, and the outcomes include resilient and responsive healthcare system accessible to all Sierra Leoneans across the life stages. 2, improved reproductive and child health. 3, improved resource availability to support healthcare service delivery. 4, increased availability and accessibility of safe drugs and highly reduced mortality rate. Now, the ministry's core functions and its excellency's priorities for this current year are maternal mortality rate reduced by 20% from 443 deaths per 100,000 live births through increased coverage of antenatal fourth visit, increased coverage of facility delivery, and reduced prevalence of anemia. Infant mortality reduced by 25% from 75 deaths per 1,000 live births through increased coverage of Penta 3 vaccination and reduction of malnutrition amongst under 5 children. Life expectancy in Sierra Leone increased from 54. Interesting commitment there. The Ministry of Health is saying we are committing ourselves in 2024 from April, which is the 4th month, to December, which is the 12th month, to increase the life expectancy in Sierra Leone from 54 to 61 years through reduction in the prevalence of malaria cases in Sierra Leone. Increase health workers density from 17 to 25 health workers per 10,000 population through recruitment of additional 5,000 health workers across the country. Review and implementation of the HRH retention policy. So 7 of them. It says construct a national cancer diagnostic and treatment center and 5 regional hospitals. Out-of-pocket expenditure on health reduced from 50.4% to 48% through implementation of Sierra Leone Health Insurance Scheme, SLESHI. How long have we been talking about this? And 1,500 jobs created or facilitated youths through project activities, Health Service Commission recruitment, field surveys, apprenticeship, etc., etc., etc. But then under project trackers, my brothers, rehabilitation of 12 government hospitals. That's a huge ask, and I want to start with that. It starts from Magboroka, Kenema, Connaught, Kabala, Makeni, Kalambo, Gambia, Butloko, Moyamba, Matujong, Koidu government hospitals, and construction of 3 district health medical team offices in Pujong, Karine, Falaba. Anyways, Andrew, let me start off with the trackers. Huge commitment. First of all, one of the major interesting. I mean, I don't want to be smiling about it, but it's you want to, because the life expectancy, the minister is saying he wants to make a commitment that it should increase from 54 to 61 years in 2020.
You know, when you announce those results, clearly you see that ministry should be at least delivering 1 result every month. Mm-hmm. Because if you say all of these are going to be achieved, it's so there's going to be no rest for the wicked.
No rest.
So you see increase in life expectancy. So there's really needs to be some conversation on life expectancy. So it's good.
And it was tied. Forgive me, but it was tied to malaria.
Yeah, it's tied to malaria because there is a research. So when you look at the U.S. Presidential Malaria Initiative, there's quite a lot of research showing that the biggest killer in Sierra Leone is malaria. So if you reduce malaria mortality, you definitely increase life expectancy. So of course there are many things around increasing life expectancy. So when you look at hunger, malnutrition, food productivity. So basically it was saying that malaria is the big game changer for that increase to be achieved. I don't know the science of it, but that's his explanation. So it's good for us to hear from WHO at the end of the year, but by this time next year for WHO to tell us what is life expectancy in Sierra Leone like. It's good. Infant mortality, maternal mortality, so all reduction in all of that. I think to Austin Dembi is one minister that has been doing incredibly well in many facets. So when you look at Sierra Leone's performance on many health indicators, I don't think he's been saying much, but Sierra Leone's performance on many health indicators really it's really giving the turnaround for the country. Of course, drawing largely from the investment made in previous years in the free healthcare initiative until now. So Sierra Leone is actually building health systems. So there is need. You mentioned SLESHI, a Sierra Leone social
insurance
health insurance initiative. Insurance initiative. So that scheme needs to be put in place. We are not going to expect social insurance scheme to come in Sierra Leone this year to start working miracles. But I think there is need for it to be introduced, and I'm happy that it has mentioned cautiously, and to see how you learn in a couple of districts and then see how you can scale it up. What is dangerous is that we have a country where a lot of Sierra Leoneans have now been used to things like called free health care, free education. So by the day we begin to say, let us begin to pay for our health, let us begin to pay for our education, then we'll begin to talk about serious development. So it's good that there is that introduction. So we actually need greater thinking. And this is where I continue to say civil society will be very useful, and the media will be very useful to see how we'll work with such a ministry, the Ministry of Health, to see how we can turn around those outcomes. 5,000 health workers, new health workers to be recruited and deployed. The last time we checked, the health workforce, especially at basic health, they have what they call the basic health package for essential services. The last time we checked, it was about only 23% of essential staffing that we have in our health facilities. So it's good for us to see, by throwing in another 5,000 health workers, what does that mean? And so if it means if you have nurses with assured contracts, what does that mean in terms of turnaround for our health facility? So it's like I say, I often say it's difficult to fix a country. I think what is easy to say is like I went to turn up in a facility and I couldn't get drugs. So it's So I only hope that they succeed in this. So it is useful to see how in health as well, we actually push the issue of accountability. We've been hearing when we heard about such scandals, say for example, I think that was in 2017, 18, 19, it was the Global Fund scandal. A lot of health workers were were detained, and it made a lot of donors actually become cautious about how can I invest in Sierra Leone's health care. So I think it is useful for us to see, even on the health performance tracker, more accountability indicators rather than just delivery, project delivery indicators, yes.
Interesting. Marcos, I don't want you to comment on the Ministry of Health. I want to take you to the Ministry of Sports. Interesting how football appears to be the only sport. As this document this contract is skewed in that direction. I'll read through, the major project trackers, but let me just go through quite a few. Now it says the ministry's core functions, excellencies, priorities for the current year will be review of the National Sport Policy and National Sport Authority Act, NSA Act 2017, upgrade sporting facilities across the country, strengthening the directorate in the Ministry of Sports, support the National Physical Education Program for Sports Development, support to Sports for Development and Peace, SDP Secretariat, 1,000 jobs created for young people through project activities, employer lobby, and advocacy for apprenticeship. Now, to the project trackers, Marcos, project trackers, installation of artificial turf, perimeter fence, floodlight and generator to power floodlight at King Tom Football Academy for the cost of $464,000, a project which has been done already and implemented by FIFA. It's contained in this document. I would like to ask the Ministry of Sport if that was under part of the projects they were looking forward to implement this year. Installation of the artificial turf, perimeter fence, floodlight, 100-seater pavilion, and generator to power floodlights at approved school for the cost of $520,000 United States dollars. Installation of artificial turf, perimeter fence, floodlight, 100-seater pavilion, and generator to power floodlight in Botloko to improve and increase access to quality and secure playing for the cost of $507,000 United States dollars. Installation of artificial turf again, perimeter fence, floodlight, 100-seater pavilion for and generator to power floodlight in Bow Coronation Fields for the cost of $525,000 United States dollars. Floodlight again, installation at Kenema Mini Stadium for the cost of $70,000. Repair of artificial turf in Kono and installation of perimeter fence for the cost of $50,000. SLFA Technical Center upgrade, construction. Purchase of 4 Costa buses for the cost of $100,000. Purchase of King Long 3 buses for Leon Stars, Sierra Queens, and youth national teams. This is quite interesting. It appears as if football is the only. Marcos.
Yeah, I think most of what has been mentioned there, they are ambitious projects, and there is a need for us to actually work on them. And as you were stating them, I was thinking that if these things are achieved, and I think.
Well, the question, I wish I had the direct line to, call the Secretary General, Acting Secretary General of the Football Association at the moment, because these are projects that are in the pipeline for the Sierra Leone Football Association. Now football returns to the Football Academy after the new turf was installed there. Now Premier League matches, every Premier League match, as long as they're playing in the Western area, they're now being played at the Sierra Leone Football Academy with floodlights and artificial turf.
Yes, that's what I said.
And then it's here again. So does it fall within the remit of the ministry, or is that something that the Sierra Leone Football Association should be working on? Is it a joint project? Are they looking to invest that much resources as well? I mean, when these are projects that the Football Association could get monies from FIFA for to implement.
Yes, but you will not say that everything will be sponsored by FIFA. So that is why the government, I want to believe, as the Chief Minister said, that before putting this document together, he went length and breadth, met with people that matter, discussed issues before enveloping them into that particular document, which is to say that FIFA may have its priority areas, but as a country, we also have to, look at certain areas to develop. So we know that these are pending projects. Probably they also incorporated them. Irrespective, because if you look at initially in the Ministry of Energy, you agree with me that some were indicated in dollars, whilst others in like the schools in Leones. So that perhaps the possibility that and these ones you read out there in Leones, so perhaps government will come in to give the support to them. So I don't think it's questionable, because the issue of sports in Sierra Leone, especially football, is very, very important. And for some time, for quite too long, we've lagged behind. And perhaps government wants to take it to a height that will be good for the people of Sierra Leone.
But
so
if you're taking it to a height, I mean, it has to be. It's not just. I mean, yes, they're playing surfaces. Yes, they are artificial turf. But I mean, when these venues are prepared, you don't go running on the artificial turf when you have a sports meet, when you have an athletic meet. You don't do that, do you?
Yes, but it's not. I don't think they will transform the system, because if they know that general sports, mostly schools, right, do sports in those areas. We know that the national stadium, when we have sports, national sports, the tracks are there. It is well prepared. But in those other areas, they can still find a way to do it, because you can't put artificial grass or carpet on the runway. You can't put it there. You put it inside where they play football, and there will still be the tracks around. So as a result of that, I don't think they are well off. I think they are well informed before putting these things together. They are well informed. So I think it will be fine if it is done. Just that doing all that in 1 year, I want to believe that is for this year alone, right? It's very tasking, That's my problem, right? That's why I said the conceptualization, the concept there is extremely good. It's so fascinating, right? It is only if we are able to actually put them into effect.
And I also didn't mention that they're going to buy 40 motorbikes with the cost of 55,200 United States dollars. That's the Ministry of Sports.
The entire
as part of, yes, I mean for 2024, Andrew.
So I don't know what the debate was. Does it mean if within your sector, because you're kind of saying, is it going to something that's going to be delivered by SLAFA? Is it going to be delivered by the ministry? Is there consensus on how these targets are being drawn?
Pretty much.
But I think the reality is, as long as it's happening in your sector. So when you say performance contract, it's not just, whilst it's a doing contract, it's a facilitation contract as well. So there are things you can facilitate within your ministry for it to be done by agencies under you, as long as it's done within your tenure. So you can claim it as yours. So I think there must have been some coordination done between the various agencies before the minister comes up with the for example,
I mean, there's no arguing that.
Yeah.
The minister mentioned it was extensive. They did a lot of work to ensure that they had. But my concern, Andrew, in the same vein with the Ministry of Sports is, I mean, it is said that they're looking at physical health education, I mean, extending that to schools. But if you look at, I mean, the major project trackers for 2024 is primarily football. I mean, it's not the only sport. It's not. Everything is pointing towards getting an artificial turf for a football playing fish.
That is true. In fact, so to me, that's the beauty about having a performance contract open to the public. So if you are now an athlete in some other field, you can go now to the minister to say, why are you ignoring me? And there should be, and I'm happy there was some mention that this is just a list among many other things. I think you read that under education. So these are the priorities. So definitely you're right. If you are a volleyball enthusiast, why could soccer be the only thing that should be? I think it's a question that is worthwhile.
Perhaps it's gradual. For this year, because this year is not terminally, but by the year. Perhaps the other year they will concentrate on other years.
So if I can recall well, the commitments made by President Bio in the manifesto in 2023 for sports, he mentioned X amount of international games that Sierra Leone will be participating into. So you're right, Marcos. So if you say you're claiming to say you prepare the country to participate in X amount of international games. So football should not be the only game that you'll be preparing the country for. But maybe by their calculation,
the biggest sports for now.
Maybe by their calculation,
the biggest sports.
We are doing well in other games. For them to hit that target, it's actually football that they need to invest much into. I cannot query or argue what that investment means. But I think, to me, I continue to come back to this message that this is a tool for everyone to use. I think we need to share it far and wide. And
you said you sent it by it.
So I was just looking for your number, but I think John will share it with you as well.
Yes, I will share Marcos by the end of the show. Now let's move on and see how fast we will be able to round up Andrew. Now this is significant as far as governance is concerned. This is quite significant as far as citizens' involvement and participation is concerned. What would you now say should be expected of everyone? I mean, this is now beyond just getting civil society, active civil society voice in the entire conversation. This is now also going beyond just getting the media actively debating this contract. This goes now beyond having the key state actors now leading the conversation. It goes to the point where citizens should have a voice and be involved in this conversation. What would you expect of citizens going forward?
So if you're a beggar on the street and you like hopping from one office to the other, so what this document is now saying, so ministries will now tell you, I have a job to do. Because at the end of the day, it's not really how much of those that you attended to, but how much of your target that you respond to. So I think, to me, and I continue to harp on the same point about the way it's structuring the conversation. So it structured the conversation such that at the end of the day, it will be useful for Marcos Bangura and I to come and debate with the Minister of the Minister of Justice, for example. What are the justice? So for those that are interested in justice delivery, so it's good with debate on that.
So this should be an engaging.
It's a framework for public conversation.
Public conversation. You should have. I mean, these contracts. I'll call them contract drivers. You have them. You bring them to the public. You have journalists questioning them. You have presenters asking them questions. You have civil society engaging them, digging deep to now extract what the hidden points were or notes were when they were having this conversation with the minister.
Definitely. And what they have done as politicians, the very essence of a political party is for you to win elections. So they said, they basically are saying, we believe in performance to give us legitimacy to win elections. And one of the ways of doing that is to see how the very instrument that voted us in, how we're going to make sure that we are going to cut bite sizes of chunks of work every year to see how we can deliver on that. There are many debates to this, John. Someone will say, what you've done this year is not adequate for you to hit those targets. And that's what the biometer will be tracking, whether from what we are seeing, because for the biometer, what you are seeing as results, they are mere process indicators. It will show that year 1, year 2, you'll be hitting 500,000, for example, as a case maybe. I keep mentioning the youth employment because that's really one target that everyone will relate to. So, for example, because when you go into certain domains, like for example, food security, a lot of people will want to see how they get a plate of rice or food on their table. But do you know how it's measured? They say we'll reduce our food insecurity in the global food insecurity index by this percentage. But a lot of people will not understand what that means. For them, it's really about having food on their table.
Can I afford a plate of rice?
Yes. Can I feed my family?
Can I feed my family?
So jobs is very easy. It's very easy. It's very relatable. So I think yes. I think I think what State House have done is to lay that framework for conversation. I would like to encourage opposition actors to take this bait, to take this opportunity to be having surgeries. We expect to see, we have a situation where SLPP and APC in Parliament approve everything that the president does, and in the end, which party do you actually blame? So, I mean, I'm not saying it's only when APC is in opposition, but when SLPP was in opposition, that was the mantra, the situation in Parliament. So we now have a situation where we have a framework for policy conversation, even for Parliament. So when we are now talking, when the minister says, I'm going to lay this bill, it's really about his delivery. Any piece of legislation that is going to. So it's good for the opposition as well to be laying policy briefs. Under John Oponjo Benjamin, when he was chairman of SLPP at a point in time, I saw him yesterday. On Friday, I was looking at some of his news briefs when he was making monthly press briefings. So we expect the opposition as well to deepen policy-based conversation. That's the only way we can conquer it. To take some of these documents and then profile alternatives. You know, it doesn't mean that if one regime succeeds, it doesn't mean that they won't get out of power. Yeah. America, they have all the good roads, all the electricity in this world, but it's the quickest country to change the government. So I think it's good for elites to agree on to one thing, to agree that it doesn't matter who is in power, but let us agree that we need to improve our country. On how we elect leaders, I think it's good we consign that into some election period. But for Sierra Leone, every day is an election day. Every day is a polling day. For God knows how long. Every day when you hear the radio, it's about now the new game in town is tripartite committee. That's what you hear about.
But even the tripartite committee now is being drowned in the news about kush and drug abuse. There is no more talk about, no more conversations around the tripartite committee.
So it's even good, like for example, kush. If you are interested in kush, you need to look at this document to say, how is this addressing kush? If it's not addressing kush, you need to face the chief minister to say, you know, we have serious problems that none of your ministers is addressing this year. So what do we do about it? So I think it's a framework for conversation. And over and beyond that, it's going to show how our resources are going to be directed this year. So that's why it's really key for civil society to digest this, the media to digest this, and then to engage people who hold our resources to account for it.
Marco, same question. What should be done going forward? I mean, you are here as CSOs, you're here as development partners, you're here as development experts, talking about or sharing your views. But what can be done or what should be done by members of? I mean, let's call them members of the public. By I mean the electorates, those who go to the polls every time when the ballots are announced, when elections are announced, those who go to vote, those who, like Andrew was saying, a man who would spend 20 leons on a plate of rice. I mean, what should they be doing at this moment?
Yeah, before I respond to that, let me say I'm more of a mere spectator here today. Honestly, you have not given me time to talk, so I say I should express it. And
oh, you feel that way?
Of course, it's reality. You cut me short. Andrew. So,
oh, you feel
this is the
that?
first time I've come wherein I have little time to talk, and I'm sorry. I'm discussed. Not with that problem. You are completely. Okay.
Oh, you feel that way?
I don't feel. That's the reality.
Not.
If you call us to come, now you are saying that I'm this, I'm that, and that. I should say one or two things. And you told me to be a spectator, and I have to tell you that it's not done, right? In respect of your question.
Well, you've had your time to talk, my
time?
friend. I mean, I've
given you me time.
I've given you time to talk.
Not, John.
Anyways,
if I've got a series, of. So Andrew is doing all the talking.
It's okay.
But I said, that's not Andrew's problem. It's
okay,
John's problem. Because he invited me.
It's okay.
Even if you give me the opportunity to talk, I will continue to talk. So
it's okay. Proceed.
Yes, because it is for next time when you call me, I have to rush to come.
It's okay. It's okay.
But you have not done well.
It's okay. Proceed.
In respect of that, young men and women today are caught in a web as a result of financial crisis, or as a result of the fact that they have not given themselves jobs, because you need to have a job. If I cite example to myself, I was working at NATCOM, I was sacked, but I found a job for myself. that I'm doing, instead of being irrelevant in society, I decided to say, okay, let me just come on board and do something. So that is, Andrew stated something that is very, very important, that Sierra Leone has been clouded with election. Because before elections, during elections, after elections, there is always this crisis of people talking about elections. And there is a need for this kind of a performance contract that will enable individuals, you may find ways and means to ask questions, to be incorporated. For example, if these things are implemented, considering the fact that there will be so many jobs, I think that's Andrew, is very, very important. The issue of jobs, right? Because if you look at all the ministries, the responsibilities that they have been given, and the fact that the government decided that this year alone they will provide large number of jobs, I think about 250,000, I stand to be corrected, as you stated, I think that should be fine.
It's 500,000 jobs.
No, for the year, this year. 500,000 in general, not merely for this year.
Wait to read the document.
Okay, the document,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
No, I was thinking, because there was this talk about 500 prior to this time. And there was one occasion he mentioned the issue of 450,000. I thought it is for this year alone, for people to get jobs in many areas. But in as much as you've confirmed it, that makes it big, and that makes it fine for Sierra Leoneans. Because imagine the government providing that kind of job. The only catch there is the fact that it is a dependency theory, because the government depends on the private sector to actually provide 70% of those jobs. Right? So as a result of that, we pray that it happens. Because if it happens, a lot of our colleagues will get jobs. Right? And some of us that have decided that we go this way, we continue. Perhaps pressure and other things will be less on us, and that should be fine. Family members and others will be able to get jobs, which is very, 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 very important. So Sierra Leoneans should turn a new page instead of talking about elections all the time. But again, there are certain factors sometimes that will influence the talking about elections, right? When certain things happen towards elections or after elections, there is a tendency for people, perhaps who are not too engaged, to continue to discuss it. It will happen. It is like, it always happens, whether it is from the APC or the SPP. That's why I said the two political parties have a role to play, because they are the predominant political parties in Sierra Leone. So as a result of that, if they keep the ball rolling in a positive way, then I think we can reach there, the crescendo of achievements.
All right, Marcus, thank you very much for that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the time. I think we will just take a few comments from some of our viewers. I think it's one we have from WhatsApp. Mustafa from the UK saying performance contracts have been signed since the days of ABK and left without the most basic water supply. What journalists and civil society should do now is ask how these targets will be achieved. Politicians have been promising but have not been able to explain via document written or how monies will be obtained to finance these projects. As long as government continues to expand 59% on the salary or expend 59% on salaries and 22% on debt servicing, this is just another public exhibition of a very large government. If Salone is to move forward, public expenditure on salaries has to be drastically reduced, and that money should be invested in public service provision. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we will not be able to take more comments from our Facebook page because of time, but let me come back over to you, gentlemen, as we round up for today. Let's look at what we think the week ahead would be. When I started, we asked about projection. A week ahead, what do you think this coming week would hold in terms of governance? I mean, more debate around the performance contract and other issues around, especially social issues, particularly with regards to that of the drug-related Kush issue that we're dealing with.
So at the risk of not taking much time, I would just continue to encourage viewers and listeners. Some of these messages are not really coming from an informed place. So get yourself informed, read the document, and then read the methodology that is being used to assess the ministers. So I think it should be a new dawn. So this is the first time I am seeing it. I don't know others have seen performance contract before, but I have not seen it of any of my ministers before. This is the first time that it has been made public. So don't get me wrong, performance contracts did exist under Ernest Bai Koroma. There was a loud talk about it, but whether it was made public for you to spread this contract now on newspapers, on social media. I think this is the first time for us to say, let us take advantage of that and then hold politicians for their commitment that they made.
Absolutely. First time. Marcus?
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for Sierra Leoneans to actually assess ministers individually, not merely the governments, that holistic kind of assessments that people have been doing. But you can now assess a particular ministry or a particular minister, though there is the concept or the idea that it has existed before. But this one has been made very loud. So, public. Yes, not very loud as well, you understand? It's public because 2019, we are told, the president told us about performance contracts. So it's not new. Did you see it? I did not see it. That's why I said this is loud. That one was not loud because we did not see it, you understand? So as a result of that, this is very important. There is an opportunity. Most times, we level criticisms, right? And there is the need for us not to level criticisms vaguely, right? Now we see a particular ministry with evidence, then we assess them. We only hope, after this particular display and the signing of these documents, we only hope their performances will be made known to us, right? Because we know that there are lapses in certain areas and there are developments in certain areas. But even where there are lapses, government officials will tell you that we have worked assiduously in this side, we have made gains there. So as a result of that, we want to see that situation. And there are other areas where government has made developments. It's very easy and simple. You can see it, right? Just like the mirror, say the eye is not itself, but by the reflection of some other thing. So as a result of that, if those performances, when the Ministry of Energy, for example, if I say here that the Ministry of Energy has not been performing, it has received huge amounts of monies from the World Bank through IDA, right, for access to electricity, you will have somebody that will challenge you that the electricity system now is better than before, and a lot of improvement has been made, you understand? So that argument will go on because it's practical, you can see it. It's visibly, you understand, with your own eyes. So as a result of that, we hope it will be made public as well. Assessment and the grading. I don't know whether it should be graded by A1 to F9. You understand? We want to do that as well.
So, I mean, we'll do our best to get the Minister of Information and Civic Education to be, on AYV on Sunday, one of these weekends, so that we will talk about how the grading is going to be done, or perhaps the Chief Minister who develops the entire process. Well, that's how we come to the end of AYV on Sunday for today. Up next will be AYV News at 9. Stay tuned. A repeat of this show will come up at 10 on Thursday. Till then, have a great week. It's been AYV on Sunday. I'm John Conte, wishing you a good night. President Bio in his second term has reposed confidence in many young people to mantle critical governance positions of trust.
So that's the second time it's in the competition. We all hold back and make sure say we connect citizens and the government.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Why is President Bio veering towards this trend?
Today, for the very first time, we may have a party that has close to 2/3 majority in parliament. That is not good for a democratic. Let me, Mr. Minister.
My name is John Conte, and this is AYV on Sunday.